everyone, welcome back to the Earthon Survival Guide, the podcast for all disciplines, paths, players, and game masters. With your questers, Josh and Dan, I am Dan.
I am Josh.
And on today's podcast, we will be discussing all things political and thornical, as we're going to go down and talk about the Talshara Ranelle, our next in our series. So if you have any questions about anything we're about to talk about tonight, or after you hear it that we have talked about, drop us a line at edsgpodcast@gmail.com, and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Or we'll bank it for our major show on Freedonia.
Yeah, I was about to say, any emails that you send us, we will probably hang on to for the live show in February. We talked about that last week. FreedoniaCon, the weekend of
after
February 16th to 18th. And we've got a live show on the Sunday afternoon that we have done the last couple of years, and it's always fun.
Yeah, it's always fun to see exactly how much I can screw it up again. So I'll remember to print the emails this time, and then we'll be off to a better start than usual.
What?
Doing
prior preparation? What
is that like?
What madness is this?
My madness. I have madness to my methods. That's all I'm going to say about that. So this is the Talshara Ranelle. This Ranelle comprises most of Bloodwood's militia and a very high percentage of the wardens and exolashers. So this is the military Ranelle, for lack of a better term.
Yes, that's probably accurate.
Fair enough. Yeah. And when we say military, we're not just talking warriors. So don't think that you're going to come across a whole bunch of warrior disciplines if you encounter somebody in the Talshara Ranelle. Nearly every single combat discipline is represented by this Ranelle. So if they do the fighty, Talshara is involved. So somebody will represent something. So swordmaster, archer, beastmaster, cavalryman, you name it, the Talshara Ranelle is involved in it.
Yeah, and there are probably a significant number of followers of the Woodsman path that are also part of that Ranelle.
Yeah, fair.
Given how the Woodsman often ties into the defense of elven lands in general, but the Bloodwood in particular in this case, the Woodsman probably has quite a number of adherents within that group.
I always wanted to play an elven Woodsman.
The Woodsman path is pretty cool.
Yeah.
We talked about that, obviously,
ages
quite
ago.
A number of episodes back.
100 or so.
Yeah.
Always wanted to play one. Anyway, on to some other things about the Talshara Ranelle. Their current leader is Erithander. And Erithander has built in some absolute unfailing loyalty to the Queen throughout his entire Ranelle. And because of this, and it's a long-standing unfailing loyalty, this allows Erithander to speak bluntly to the Queen, where everybody else in court has to do all that frou-frou politicking and mincing their words and not necessarily saying exactly what they mean to say, but they're kind of dancing around the issues. And because this is the warrior group, the military Ranelle, he just gets to come right out and speak bluntly, which Alachia actually sometimes, I can't say prefers, but appreciates.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is because of how long the Talshara have served as the defenders of the Wood and the Elven Court.
Yes.
Going back to well before the Scourge.
Mm-hmm.
They were actually instrumental in helping the Elven Court during the Orichalcum Wars.
Yeah.
In the fights that they were having at that time. Incidentally, episode 78.
Oh.
For the Woodsman, I went up and because our YouTube channel has everything organized into handy playlists, I just pulled up the Paths playlist and looked at what episode number it was. So if you do want to go and look back at that, there you
have at it. Absolutely. So yeah, some history, since Josh, you started bringing up the history of when they were founded. This was during the reign of Queen Failla, so way back when. The Queen's reigns better than I do, especially the order of them and how far they go back. The Talshara Ranelle was founded by Taharalon, 2 R's and 2 L's. It's really hard to say that one without my Spanish kicking in and wanting to do the Y sound on the double L. So Taharalon, a very valorous elf, and he as well served faithfully and loyally, probably instilling that ahead of Erithander's reign. So served very faithfully, very loyally to the queen, where one member of the Ranelle actually at one point taking an arrow meant for Queen Liara. So really, they do act like kind of the U.S. Secret Service, and they will take an arrow for whoever's in charge. Later on, Queen Liara actually chose the Talshara members for her personal guards, and even more for some exolashers. So this is where it all started, where the queen began to hand select the Talshara Ranelle members for personal guards and any exolashers for the court, and hasn't changed much since then.
Yeah, it has been quite some time that this has been going on. I was just checking. Failla was the queen right after the one that was killed by Alamaze.
Yeah.
So was the one that declared separation of Shosara from the Elven court, and was sort of the one that prompted the banishment of the one that went and found the books of Harrow and all of that. You know, names are not important.
The name escapes me, because it does.
That long ago.
Yes, very long time ago. So, as the Scourge approached, Queen Alachia was in charge of this, was reigning at this time. So, as the Scourge approached, she charged the Talshara Ranelle with repelling all of the horrors, as many as possible at least, while the warders prepared the wooden kaer. So, they had their job, keep everybody out, so playing hockey goalie, essentially. And one member of the Talshara Ranelle, Seriel's Ray, founded the Grove of Blades Combat School, also during this time, right before the Scourge. And by training so many people, so many recruits, this bought time for the entire Bloodwood to perform the Ritual of Thorns. So basically, the queen stipulates that the Talshara was instrumental in biding enough time, fighting off the horrors, training enough new recruits to replace those fallen fighters, so that they could perform the Ritual of Thorns and get everybody safe. And therefore, after the Scourge, the Talshara repelled Orc Scorchers and Troll Moots, because they actually thought that the Bloodwood would be easy pickings after the Scourge. And I think they were a little wrong.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I am distracted because now I am trying to think about the history of the queens.
Fair.
Because now, like, something is just occurring to me, and I am sorry that I am being semi-distracted and trying to figure things out here. So, Dahlia was the queen that chose to visit Shosara and got killed by Alamaze.
Along the way, yes.
Her successor was Failla, and it is speculated that Failla was actually the previous time that Alachia was queen, which makes things actually interesting if it was like during the reign of Failla that there was the rise of the Talshara in terms of the Talshara's relationship to her now.
Yes.
Right? In terms of how that all goes. And then Liara, I think, and then Alachia.
That makes sense. That sounds about right to me.
Think that's the case. Hold on. I was looking in the wrong place for the history. That's why. The Orichalcomores started during Liara's reign. Yeah, okay. So it was Failla, then Liara, then Alachia.
Yes. That makes sense.
If you are going with the thing where Failla was Alachia's prior presence, that kind of paints that whole relationship with the Talshara Ranelle in a new light.
Yes.
In terms of how she is more willing to put up with stuff from them in terms of everything.
Fair enough. So this was all during the Scourge. After the Scourge, they were tasked with patrolling the entire Bloodwood, up, down, in, out, north, south, east, and west, and destroying any and all remaining horrors, and therefore clearing the wood of any taint whatsoever. And as far as we know, this is a 4th edition update, that has been taken care of. Do with that as you will. So it's a pretty straightforward Ranelle. I mean, they're the warriors of the soldiers, they're the exolashers and the queen's personal bodyguard. So, you know.
And the scouts and the patrollers and whatnot.
Yeah. A lot of blood warders.
Yeah. There is a notable detachment of them at Kaer Eidolon, where they represent the Elven court at that joint project.
Yeah.
And so, in many ways, the Talshara are one of the Ranelles that characters are likely to interact with if they go to Eidolon.
Yeah.
They will be interacting with the Talshara to a certain extent.
Completely.
And the Talshara have a very long and storied history of defending the wood and the people within it, both prior to and during the Scourge, and now after, continuing to enforce the Queen's edicts in doing what they can to intercept folks who would try and enter the wood unbidden and dealing with them. Although there is a lot of border, they have a lot of protections and everything in place to notify them when things are not right and send folk to check out on it as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. So some major players in this Ranelle, and I know all of these episodes are very, very quick because, you know, they're fleshed out more in the Elven Nations book, so by all means, go grab a copy. So, as I said, the current leader, is Erithander Talshara. He remains a trusted advisor to Queen Alachia. His son is Rizhart, and Rizhart has had some lapsed etiquette and was replaced by his own scribe. We'll get to that one in a minute because, by the way, those are the other two people of note. So, Erithander currently is over 300 years old, and he believes in economy and efficiency, not just like mathematical economy and money, just the economy of motion, the economy of words, the economy of deeds that you do, and the efficiency involved therein. Again, military or paramilitary economy
Logistics
of things. So that's who this person is. He speaks clearly and concisely. Again, that economy. He's brutally honest, unflinchingly loyal, and unimpeachable, and has an unimpeachable integrity to his character. So if you meet this guy somehow at court, I'm impressed as to how you've been able to work him into your plot line, but just so you know, that's how you should play him. And he's not to be messed with. As an exolasher, he started off with a warrior's path. We're not given a circle, but make one up. After he finished that, I can't say after he finished that one. Along the way, he also, by the way, studied the Archer's Path, Beastmaster Path, and Swordmaster Path. So he's got 4 disciplines under his belt, not to be trifled with. Just saying.
I haven't checked exactly, but that would indicate to me that he is a follower of the wheel.
Yeah.
Where he probably learned each of those at a different stage of his life upon the wheel, whether those disciplines match up to the strict followers or loose followers, I'm not sure offhand, but if you've got either the Elven Nations or the Old Bloodwood book, you can take a look and see if those match up.
Yeah.
Now, I have talked in the past about how I am not necessarily a huge fan of immortal elves behind everything.
Yes.
But again, with what came to mind in terms of the rise of the Talshara and the possible connection, if you want to go with it, with Alachia's prior tenure as ruler of the wood.
Yeah.
There's a possibility that you could spin it as Erithander also being among that number and having been one of the founders who disappeared for a bit and has since come back.
Fair.
One of the advantages, of course, of the Talshara's presence in the northern reaches of the wood is that it is a lot more sparsely populated and a lot easier for somebody from outside the wood to come in. And of course, there's always the fact that quite a number of elves who are interested in pursuing the defense of the wood will petition to actually become members of the Ranelle.
Yes.
And so that's another way that this same person could come back in. Again, if you wanted to go that way, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of, the head of every Ranelle is actually another immortal that's all friends with Alachia.
Yeah.
Well, friends, I will put in scare quotes.
Yes.
but that, like, the ones that seem to have a lot more ability to be blunt or honest with her could conceivably be fellow immortals that she has a much longer pre-existing relationship with, and so gives them more slack than she does because she sees them more as peers than the non-immortal elves that would be present.
Yes. Fair. So Erithander does have a private agenda, which you all get to know about.
They all do.
They all do. Who doesn't in the Bloodwood? Come on. This is the politicking type part of Earth Dawn. To ensure that Queen Alachia would never have inferior guards or inferior warriors for the Wood, this is how dedicated Erithander is, he's been consolidating powers and the loyalty of every minor Ranelle in the northern reaches, because he's doing all of this training of those warriors, of those recruits himself. So, A, he's probably the best suited for it, just going to say. And B, he wants to make sure that even after he's done, if there's ever a falling out between him and the Queen, that his Ranelle still takes care of training the guards, the exolashers, so forth and so on. So, no matter what, he's loyal to the Wood and Queen Alachia, so he wants to make sure everybody's trained properly.
Yeah.
Second up, so we mentioned his son, Rishiart, Rhisiart. Interesting spelling. Again, I think a cat ran across the keyboard here. Rishiart Talshara was sent on a mission outside the Bloodwood to retrieve elven artifacts in a very small party. So the Queen, for many years now after the Scourge, has been sending out little tiny parties to retrieve artifacts outside of the Wood that are elven in nature and bring them back to the Wood. So this is, again, her policy of, we stay here and all of our stuff stays here. So Rishiart was actually assigned to do this a number of times. So he's been outside the Wood repeatedly, but was invited to dine with the Queen once upon a time after one of these excursions, and his ignorance of court etiquette was kind of refreshing until it wasn't.
Yes.
So he got to argue. He ended up arguing with the Queen, and that got him banished from court. Immediately, and I do mean to the minute, immediately replaced with his scribe, which we'll also get to in a minute or so. And so Rishiart has been kind of replaced at court, and he's now currently in charge of a garrison at kaer Eidolon, as far away out of the Wood as possible, but still yet in the province of being in the Wood.
Yes, under the thumb, as it were.
Yeah.
Somewhat embarrassed by the whole thing. He is doing what he can to distinguish himself as the head of the garrison there at Eidolon, and is very interested in uncovering the presence of the Seekers of
the Heart.
The Seekers of the Heart.
Yeah.
I almost said Seekers of Trust, which is like two groups mixed together. Seekers of the Heart, and particularly Monus Bayer, the leader of the Seekers, and doing what he can because they are against the Queen, and if he can distinguish himself by breaking them or uncovering plots or capturing Monus, anything like that, where that he could potentially earn him back into the good graces of the Queen, or just in general doing things to distinguish himself in the service of the crown down there, he is willing to do so because he does recognize the shame that he has brought upon the house by his behavior.
Yes.
And wants to make up for it.
Absolutely.
And so is very loyal, and is also, in some regards, in that sense, willing to pass along information about black market activities that are going on with the Karathaska and their shipments and so forth. So any operations trying to get people or goods into the Wood illicitly have to slip past his attention. And so he is, again, much like the Talshara in general, someone that folks who are dealing with Eidolon in some capacity are going to need to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll run across him there. So again, if you're going to work any of the Talshara in, he's the easiest one. Kaer Eidolon is the easiest location. Or as you said, the northern reaches, because they're looking for new recruits, and he's taking any recruits. Mostly Elven, gonna say. One of those things.
One other thing to keep in mind as part of his background is the fact that the Queen does send out small groups to retrieve items of interest, Elven artifacts, to the court. And so that is something that could show up as a
adventure hook.
As an adventure hook, as a ally or competitor or antagonist in some capacity, depending on what the group is up to. Throw a little bit of a wrinkle into a classic Indiana Jones style relic recovery adventure.
Yes.
Where you've got multiple groups kind of going after the same thing. I would imagine that I don't know that it's specified, but the blood elf that shows up periodically in Parlength, in Haven, if it isn't specified otherwise, could very conceivably be part of the Talshara Ranelle, being someone sent out on these sort of missions regularly.
Yeah.
I do know that he is sort of presented as an envoy of the crown in some regards, and is a little bit more obvious about his presence and whatnot than groups further afield might be.
Absolutely.
But that's also something that could allow you to bring blood elves and some aspects of their politics into adventures that you're running in other parts of Barsave. Again, trying to find ways that you could potentially use this information in a more traditional game if you don't have one that's focused so heavily on the wood.
Absolutely. So the last person of note we need to point out in the Talshara Ranelle is Elisa Willoughby. Willowby, so a slightly different spelling than I'm used to. She is, again, the former scribe to Rigiart. She was born to two of the palace staff. She was born during the Scourge. Her father was in the royal archives, so she was perfectly suited to become a scribe. She was assigned to Rigiart on these excursions to actually write down what happened, who he spoke to, how things went, tell the tales. This is all about legends, and really does consider Rigiart her best friend, not necessarily her former boss, but her best friend. They spend enough time together, and is absolutely under the impression that her position as consortess is temporary because she was only put there to really upset the Talshara Ranelle, and especially Rigiart himself, because he got supplanted within 60 seconds with her. But she's making the best of it.
Yes, she has quite a bit of understanding of court politics because of her background and upbringing in court.
Yeah.
Even peripherally. And so is doing everything she can to leverage that to her advantage and to distinguish herself and to get in nicely with the Queen, taking advantage of that position to advocate for her friend in order to hopefully make a position available for him when he eventually distinguishes himself.
Yeah.
And is able to return to court. Whether that ends up with her stepping down and him taking that place, or whether he gets another spot, depends on exactly what goes on at the time. But she, unlike a lot of the consortes, is under no illusions that she deserves the position.
Yeah.
A lot of the others are, like the nobles or the children of the leaders of the Great Ranelles.
Yes.
And so therefore many of them have a certain amount of privilege that they bring to the role with them. And while there are the political court games that they kind of need to play, there is a sense of, this is what we are for. We kind of fill this role until we need to step up and lead the house or do whatever other thing needs to be done. Whereas Elisa's is, hey, wow, this is really fortuitous. I'm going to make the best of this and do what I can and demonstrate that perhaps even though I was chosen as a kind of slight, I was still a good choice, that I'm going to be doing the job as well as I can.
Yeah, for as long as I can.
For as long as I can, yeah. Exactly.
So each of these three people has their own little current activities going on. We mentioned Erithander is securing the family legacy by securing the Queen's own personal guard for generations to come, and accepting all these non-Talshara candidates to the Grove of Thorns. They've renamed the Grove of Blades Combat School to now the Grove of Thorns, because you got to be current with it, I guess, and hip. Risjart is, as you said, lamenting his mistake in kaer Eidolon, but working to get back into good graces by driving out the Seekers of the Heart. And Elisa is subtly supporting the Erithander Ranelle's agenda to open the borders of the wood, therefore decreasing one of their consortes at court and making a need for one more of Talshara consortes at court, because now they have to add more patrols, more people, therefore you need more representation at the court. So she's trying to get all of this to happen. This is a long game she's playing, and therefore the extra spot would open up for possibly Risjart to come back, and they would serve together in this role, best friends at court.
Elisa also takes to the Talshara temperament of being honest and forthright and not dissembling or being...
weasel words, as the orcs would say.
Weaselly, like some of the other folks at court are. She just does it without offending the Queen.
Yes.
But that is something that has been noted by Alachia and has even been remarked on.
Yeah.
Again, she is doing the job to the best of her ability and taking advantage of the knowledge she has of the court without necessarily playing the game the same way that everybody else does.
Absolutely. So I appreciate the fact that there are 3 distinct personalities here. Again, everything ever written in Earth Dawn really does play up interpersonal conflict. There's always good background for these characters. There's always good motivations for all of them in all of the Ranelles we've talked about. So I always appreciate that in its entirety. Because this is the military arm. They really could have made them all dumb, jarhead, single-minded, not brainy. But all of these people have more depth to them than just a two-dimensional picture of a military family.
Yeah. One last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up. It is not directly connected with the Talshara in any significant way, but because it is located in the North Reach, it falls under their aegis.
Yeah.
And that is the town of Goro Imri, which is the community of unprotected elves, of other name givers from outside the wood, and also those blood elves who don't necessarily agree completely with the Queen's edict of closed borders and preventing any outsiders from being within the wood. This is a community that was founded by an unprotected elf who came to the wood and is a troubadour and ultimately believes in the ability of people from different backgrounds to come together and through understanding each other make things better and stronger for everyone. Kind of a Barsave in miniature in terms of what the earlier idea of Thrall had. Some of the early post-Scourge, Varulus and Nedin had in terms of their vision of what Barsave could be as a shared responsibility and community rather than one individual power sort of dictating from on high what needed to be done.
Yeah. So, no, I appreciate it. This is all useful in some way because you'll find something of each Ranelle probably to incorporate if you're going to do anything in the Bloodwood, or around the Bloodwood. We're trying to give as many hooks as possible to get you inside. Yeah.
The Queen is aware of Goro Imri, but thus far has chosen not really to doing anything about it.
Yeah.
Romanarl, who is the leader, has petitioned to meet Alachia to perhaps get some kind of official recognition or to present her case and the example that is sort of being set by this community.
Yeah.
Obviously, Alachia has refused to meet with her and kind of does not recognize the community as anything kind of legitimate. But the secret that Romanarl has uncovered has to do with the woodlonging.
Yeah.
The aspect of the Ritual of Thorns that keeps blood elves ultimately tied to the wood, that while they can leave for a little while,
Yeah.
they are eventually driven to come back, as they are connected to the pattern of the wood and sort of required in one sense to keep everything going. And by the same token, those who do not undergo the ritual are eventually sort of driven out, that the closed borders of the wood are not something that is merely political in nature, but also to a certain extent is backed up by a certain amount of magical reinforcement in both cases. That is another aspect of the reason why, if we want to go back and talk about Kethos Escalanes, who is looking to find some way to safely end the ritual.
Yes.
It was something that he built into the ritual, but recognizes now that it is something that is perhaps not letting the court rejoin society.
Yeah.
You know, above and beyond the weirdness of elves with thorns sticking out that constantly drip blood, which is a little, unsettling. There's a whole bunch of magical reinforcement that's going on to continue to make that happen.
Yeah. Fair. So this is one of, I can't say my favorites, but it has more depth than at first glance.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts? Anything we missed?
No, I think we've touched on everything. As I said, the Talshara are one of the Ranelles that is most likely to be involved in more traditional games that are not based in the Bloodwood or focused on the Bloodwood, because of their presence at kaer Eidolon, because of the groups that get sent out in search of elven artifacts that Alachia wants brought back to the wood.
Yeah.
They may not all be Talshara, but certainly because there will be warriors, scouts, archers,
so forth.
There is likely to be a notable number of Talshara among them.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Talshara are connected to one of the most prestigious martial training academies in Barsave, as difficult as it would be for anyone outside the wood to study there, it's on par with the War College at House Contention.
Yes.
In terms of the prestige that would come with studying among those and learning what you can to perfect your training and your practices as an adept.
Absolutely. Go increase your prowess there if you can get in. Fair enough. So until next time, folks, don't argue with the queen for your legend.
Yeah, don't argue with the queen if you want your legend to continue.
Exactly.
Good night, everybody.